Evolutionary Theory and Psychology, 4 Guiding Principles. History of Psychology, Psychology 182, Professor Michael Botwin. Hi, in this unit we're going to do a quick exploration of 4 different principles that guide evolutionary psychology. These come from an interesting book that was one of the pop books early on about evolutionary psych, and it's quite a fun book. It's got some very interesting things, but I'm just going to swipe these 4 points here. The book is Why Beautiful People Have More Daughters, and it's got an extraordinarily long subtitle. From dating, shopping, and praying, to going to war and becoming a billionaire, 2 evolutionary psychologists explain why we do what we do. This book written by Miller and Kanazawa. So let's look at their 4 points. The first, and this is a critical one to remember, people are animals. And that is in the literal biological sense. Many times we like to elevate ourselves above the rest of the animals, and we forget that we're animals and we function biologically as well. There are some theorists out there who place us much higher than other animals, but we're still affected by the biology that we have, and those processes are similar to those in other animals. We're 98% genetically like our closest primate cousin, and think about this next breakfast, 50% like a banana genetically. So if you're cutting up a banana on your Rice Krispie someday, think about the fact that you're related genetically to that banana. Point 2, and this is a controversial one with a lot of students, there's nothing special about the human brain. What draws a lot of us to psychology is the specialness of the human brain and the incredible sophistication and complexity. And all those are there, and any evolutionary theorist would acknowledge those things. But our brains have all the same parts as any other primate brain, and mammalian brain for that matter. Our brains have all of the physiological structures that are in a dog brain, a cat brain, even a rat brain. And by nothing special, Miller and Kanazawa are telling us an important thing. They're saying that as humans, we don't have any brain structures that are lacking in other animals. If you remember, René Descartes believed that the pineal gland was a special spot in the human brain that differentiated us from the other animals. And he didn't believe that other animals had pineal glands. However, in the 1600s, with the state of the art of anatomy at the time, you couldn't have found a pineal gland in another animal. In our brains, which are far larger than the brains of most other animals, the pineal gland is the size of a pea. So imagine in a smaller brain like a rat brain or a dog brain, just how small the pineal gland is, and Descartes just couldn't find it. This allows us to do comparative psychology by looking at how other animals behave and how their brains function during different kinds of experiments. Next point. Much of human nature is innate. The vast majority of things we do are hardwired. We don't think about that, and we have a massive amount of processing that's going on that we don't think about when we're performing any kind of behavior. Things like that are hardwired. If you've ever heard the old foolish notion that we only use 30% of our brain, well, that's one of the biggest fallacies out there. We're using all of our brains all the time. The issue is we're not really terribly aware that the brain is doing things most of the time for us. It's automatic. If I were to move my arm into this frame here, and I'm trying to, where did it go? There it is. Wave. Hi. How you doing, guys? All I have to do is think about doing that. I don't have to think about moving each muscle. I don't need to know that I'm contracting a muscle, expanding other muscles, coordinating movements as much as I can coordinate things. All of this is terribly hardwired. Our respiration, our heartbeats are all controlled by the old areas of the brain. And we don't have to think about those things. Our marvelous brains are automatically processing them all of the time. Back in the old days when I was a mechanical designer, computers were first starting to come into engineering in a big way in terms of being able to do drawings and eventually run robots to put cars together. I remember during those days I would have to put an X on a spot on a drawing if I wanted a worker to go over to that spot with a welding gun and weld that spot, like putting a car door together, for example. So X marks the spot. Guy went over there with his welding gun, put it in place, hit the button, welded it. To do the same thing when robots started coming in to the auto manufacturing process, I had to write out each step of the robot arm's movement from its standing neutral position to move precisely where the weld had to go. Tell the robot arm to actually fire the weld, and then provide a backward set of instructions to get it back to the same spot. Far more difficult than telling a guy to weld at the X. So much of what we do is hardwired. But one thing that we have to remember, and this is a good point that Miller and Kanazawa make for us, that human behavior is a function of both the innate human nature that we have and our environment. When we see something in the environment, we many times react automatically. And we have a lot of things that are hardwired that don't fire unless a certain environmental pressure is there. Just think of some of our basic fears. You crawl up a ladder to fix something on a roof, and at least I start getting a little bit anxious, which is a good thing, because if you're not anxious when you're high up in the air, you might do something foolish like fall off of something. If we see a snake slithering through the grass, we're automatically taken aback. We don't go up to it and say, "Hey, snakey, snakey, let's play." There are some people that do that, but most of us don't. Because we're hardwired for certain things to happen to us in certain environments. And this can extend into many areas of behavior, like competitive situations, dominance, hierarchy negotiation, or interacting for romantic things with a member of the opposite sex. So we have to remember that environmental cues oftentimes cause behavior to happen. These four guiding principles allow us to understand evolutionary processes and put us on a continuum with other living creatures, because they interact with the environment in similar ways. So, we'll continue on with our discussion of evolution, psychology, and the history of our field. See you on the next video. This has been a We Have Couches video production. Copyright 2020, Professor Michael D. Botwin. All rights reserved. Bye now.